As a priest, I believe passionately that it's one of my duties to be concerned about the environment. I'm concerned about the environment, not just from an individual point of view, but actually because I am part of God's creation, and everybody who's watching this is part of God's creation. It's an interesting reflection that God gives us dominion over all beings as human beings. So part of our ministry and vocation as Christians is actually to extend stewardship over the whole of creation.
Jesus said, "I am your Lord and Master," but he came to serve. He said that after he had washed their feet, but he came to serve, not to be served. That should be the idea of lordship. And stewardship is looking after. It is not amassing for one's own ends. It is looking after, to be a good steward of for other people. If we are stewards of creation, it's not ours, it's God's. We are looking after it for him. We are responsible for it to him. We are answerable to him.
Our care of creation is a responsibility. It's not really even a choice. It's not, shall I, shan't I? It's, God has created this world. I am part of his creation. I have a responsibility to tend it and love it and care for it in his name. So dominion is about reflecting that love, not exercising brutish control as if we need to be in charge to discover who we are. The opposite is true. We discover who we truly are when we are humble enough and fragile enough to find our true identity in Christ.
We recently produced the 5 marks of mission, and lots of people were very excited to see that the 5th one in there was about respecting the integrity of creation. The exact words elude me at the moment. And that is an exciting step. What I think is even more exciting is realising that we can't fully inhabit the previous 4 without honouring creation as a whole. And I think once we begin to explore and expand the connections between all 5 of the marks of mission, then we will really find that there is not just a place for, but a profound need for animal advocacy if we're serious about honouring all those 5 marks of mission.
Environmentalism in churches tends to take place on the level of pretty gardens and churchyards that grow wild meadows. It doesn't look at how the land's been used for manufacturing of crops by destroying all the hedgerow and creating great monocultures. And likewise, animals can be viewed very pleasingly in a sort of little Franciscan spirituality of Francis preaching to the birds, but not affect how people view the diet. So raising those questions about lifestyle is more challenging.
You know, as human beings, we're very good at the pronouncements. And perhaps we're very good at even expressing our intentions and our hopes. The enacting and the living out and the witnessing is perhaps the most challenging thing. And it's easier to, you know, to sort of point the finger and to expect the changes to happen elsewhere.
Part of the challenge we face with the climate crisis, the environmental crisis, is of course our own personal degree of comfort. And one of the great difficulties, the elephant in the room, especially as far as veganism goes, is that it involves, for many people, giving up things that they love, giving up things that they are used to, giving up foods that they are comfortable with, giving up foods that they find satisfying. And that's a very great challenge for many people because they have become accustomed and used to certain ways of eating. alongside certain standards of living, alongside certain methods of transportation. But we're in a climate emergency and we need to be radical. So we need to radically reappraise the way we live in the Western world. And veganism is part of that.
Christians should be thinking of going vegan for a number of reasons. Perhaps the most pressing at the moment is the environmental crisis, as by not eating meat or dairy, you are greatly reducing your carbon emissions, and also even more reducing your emissions of methane gas, although those you're responsible for. So Christians should consider that for the climate.
We are heading very much, we know, to a climate catastrophe, and we have seen already in Pakistan currently, and the effects on the planet are usually on those nations that are poorer. So therefore I think it is incumbent absolutely on Christians, on the church, to consider ways in which we can tackle that and mitigate the effects that climate change is having on our environment and across the world. And one of those ways is by adopting a vegan diet.
I wanted to think about my carbon footprint. We did a climate kind of Lenten climate 40-day trying to reduce our carbon footprint thing where I worked. And we were given this diagram of different aspects of lifestyle that we might like to think about reducing our carbon footprint on. But the biggest thing I noticed was how much my meat consumption was contributing to my carbon footprint. And so I made the decision then to cut out the big carbon footprint type meats, red meats mainly, and to start to think about that. So that was I guess the initial impetus to me starting to think about my diet again and the impact of my eating habits generally on the planet.
If we're looking at carbon reduction, then of course diet matters, and we can't really, I think, move to a net zero aim that the Church of England, for example, has, without addressing lifestyle choices and what we eat, because the methane and the carbon production, not only for the animals, but transporting of soya and corpses and the like. All of that requires a reduction in our CO2 impact, which requires reducing our consumption of meats and dairy.
We're told we're in a climate emergency, a climate crisis, but we're also in a crisis of stewardship as well that leads to the climate emergency and climate crisis. And part of this is related to factory farming, part of this is related to just overproduction. And our job as clergy is to raise awareness of that. We are called to lead people into fullness of life. But that fullness of life is not just an individual concern, but actually a concern for the whole of creation that is loved by God, that is sustained by God, and is redeemed by God. So we're called to do our bit in order to create a better world where there are better conditions for all living beings.